Hello, everybody. We've made it to the last lecture day in class. Still a couple days left in the semester to get work completed. If something's not finished, still send it to me. Make sure you get all submissions to me by Sunday at 11:59 p.m. That's the final deadline. Everything will close and lock at that point. Uh, I I never accept late work beyond that final deadline. The one that was set years ago, long before I scheduled this course and long before you all registered for this course, like 3 years ago, they knew that the semester courses were going to end on May 12th at 11:59 p.m. So I never extend beyond that deadline. So even if it's not finished, just send me everything you have to the current state and maybe add some comments, put something in the comments and be like, this is what I was trying to do and didn't quite get to or something. I know how time consuming game development can be and how short our time frame here was. And then it's time for a break. If you're taking the summer off, it's a good idea. It's usually a good idea to register for fall classes before you leave for the break. Because otherwise it's too easy to do something else, right? Like find a job and start making good money and then drift away. It happened to me in, let's see, when was it? 2001. I made my first attempt at buying a house. A good deal on showing up on home that was purchased new family. Uh, Still like good mortgage, pay for 20 years of the whole stand. But it was new family. It was purchased from family, so I didn't want to miss the deal. Someone had tried to buy that, and I was 23 years old, so I didn't have huge amounts of savings, so that meant working extra. And I was like, well, I better take a semester off school. So it's like, I'll take one semester off school. And that turned into 10 years. It's too easy for that to happen. So maybe if you're taking the summer off, try to register for fall before you leave for the summer. Also makes it a lot easier to see academic advisors and stuff too, because well, we're human. We wait to the last minute. I'm sure y'all know what the academic advising office is like the Thursday and Friday before the semester starts. It's a little difficult to get in at times. And if you are one of the ones that gets in that week, those days, that the advisors kind of rush you out because they've got to get some, they've got to get they've got to get as far through that list as they can. So registering early is better than later. Taking courses is an even easier way to stick with it, but a good idea to register before you leave for the break too. So please keep that in mind. And then time to relax, which hopefully you've enjoyed this class enough that you're gonna maybe find it relaxing to make your own game when there's not preset guidelines and type deadlines coming out. It's way more fun that way. I would request that you do that at least once, right? Make something you want to make, not because it's an assignment, because you want to make the game and no deadlines that are brushing up on you, no criteria for somebody else, and it's a lot more enjoyable than it's a hopefully something. I find game development to be a lot of fun. Hopefully you're finding that as well. Although capturing in 8 weeks, it's probably there's stress in there that isn't necessarily part of the game development thing. It's classroom stress. So give it a try when the classroom stress isn't there. Hopefully it'll be more enjoyable. But hopefully it's been somewhat of an enjoyable semester. I was gonna kind of do early short lecture again today because module 8, all the software development stuff is project based. So if you have any other SDEV classes, I know you have projects due this week. Your gen ed stuff's still probably cumulative final based. So some people might have cumulative finals that you need to study for. And even if you caught up on everything, then I assume you're completely exhausted and really need a nap. So lots of good reasons to uh, keep our lecture time a little bit shorter today. But I didn't want to like cancel the lectures. There's still so much more we could cover, but that would happen if there was like 50 weeks to cover the subject and still rate time near the end. Just wanted to look at a couple little things. I have some graphic tools. I mentioned one the other day and went back and forth. I think I will go ahead and show that today because I also have a 2D graphic tool, a 2D graphics tool that'll be nice. Just a quick point at them, something you all can start, some buttons you can start clicking around and playing around with that can be helpful for doing stuff. And then maybe take a little a glance at some other game engines. Last week, somebody asked a question, and I installed Unreal on this laptop, which I'm pretty sure I've stated before. I always teach off the cheapest laptop at Walmart. That seems like a good one. If an assignment doesn't run on the cheapest laptop at Walmart, that means the assignment needs changed on the computer. But I did install Unreal. It opened up. It couldn't do much, but it opened up and did stuff. And then I uninstalled it. And then over the weekend, I was thinking, why did I install it? I like to look at other engines, and that one takes like an hour to install. So probably won't be installing that one, but we'll look at a couple other ones to look at similarities and stuff. Kind of see what else we have, some of the options, and hopefully how we translate what we saw examples in Godot into a couple of the game engines and kind of go on for 15 minutes or so. Sounds like a good day. A couple graphics tools that might be useful or you might like. I'm going to look at a 2D one and a 3D one, so I'm going to open up Inkscape. As you all are probably well aware, there's pixel art's quite popular, nostalgic reasons, somewhat of the vagueness. Like we kept talking about storytelling, and in a lot of ways, game development storytelling is more like poem style stories, not prose style stories. Or those detailed novels like what Victor Hugo wrote, where you have every single detail. We don't necessarily do that in our game. There's bits and pieces of a story, and then they can be pieced back together. So it's more like in some senses, it's more like poetry storytelling, where it's open for interpretation. And pixel art fits really well with that. So I'm going to open up Inkscape. With Pixel, this has the SVG graphics, which has a really nice advantage, and we can go back and edit anything in there. Right? You can always go back and edit that vector because there's no graphics saved. There's just the equations of how to create those graphics. So it's really easy to edit them. We don't have to do that. There's some popular ones. AE Sprite is probably the most popular. I think it's not free. If you like pixel art, AE Sprite. Anybody purchased that recently? That's a very popular one. I want to say $20 a year.
Wait, what?
For AE Sprite. There's a free trial, but after that was like,
A-Sprite is a subscription.
yeah, like $20 a year, isn't it?
Okay.
That's real popular. I'm not sure. But if you're making money as a game developer, that's a tax write-off. That's a business expense, so it immediately gets deducted from your tax bill. So like if your tax bill says you owe $900 and you spend $100 on graphic software, that $100 immediately comes off. Then you only owe I would say $100. So when you're making money with game development, that's kind of nice. And this one is very popular and fairly cheap. There's probably open source alternative to AE Sprite and some free ones.
I write that.
25 plus, yeah. If you search for pixel graphics, you can look into it. I was just going to show a nice little thing here because we were looking at vector graphics. which are more efficient, so your games will run faster. You're not wasting any processing on the full pixel data. And the biggest advantage though, is that you can come back and edit any point of it. I'm just gonna draw something random here. I'll just grab my little pencil thing and I'll draw some random shape, which should fill in with the color. And then I'll draw another random shape. And I'm just looking for things to be like curved together, and I'll click another color for that. And then I don't know, maybe one more random shape with lots of little like I said, hopefully that'll work the order. I'm gonna go with this. Okay. So we go through and come up with, probably spend time getting some really nice artwork, getting all the details in. But pixel art is very, very popular. So we might want to change, keep that editing capability to get with SVG, but actually release some pixel art stuff. So we make a copy of the non-editable final version, and then under the main menu under Add, there's a lot of other things we can do. This was nice. Trace bitmap. That is the other way. So if we have pixel art and want to turn it into SVG, actually, I'll do that in a second. Virtual. We have to select this. We can take this picture. I think something to pop up over here.
When you first took your mouse off, whatever you were clicking on.
Oh, I need to see the message. So under path. Convert shapes to path. Oh, that's whatever the mouse was. I'll see the little menu I was expecting here. There should be a pixel art one. Yeah, this trace bitmap turns pixel art into SVG, and there's another one that goes the other direction. And I have to look for the button. It's not one I use very often because there's other software that just make pixel art to begin with. Maybe it's under object. Different things we can do. Oh, filters, there it is. So under filters, look at all these different things. So we could add a bloom to all the materials, and we probably want to play around with these anyway. Blur the edges. Let's try to hire. There are lots and lots of different options. Change the colors, distort things, give it some sort of ripple effect, keep it like that. And then pixel tools. Under pixel tools, we can also pixelize it and just convert it to pixel art. I don't see much of a difference on that one. Maybe undo a couple times, but maybe that first thing.
Maybe it's too big, because it is lots of,
Could be.
they're 400 by 300, so maybe you're just so far out that the pixels are too tell.
I'll try that. It might just be a quick example. I'm not seeing.
I will say whenever because I have stuff for the projects here I've done here, and then exported as, tiny things at like 64 or 32 or whatever, and they're pixelated, so.
Maybe I just need to zoom in. Maybe it's so big that it's looking okay. This one usually works okay, but I've always done it with like a finished character or something. I'm not seeing any difference right now, but anyway, there's the.
I can connect any pixel art just by exporting it. So
That works too.
Yeah.
But there's all these filters and things that you can do. Whoops, need to select it. To really enhance the images. I was gonna look at pixel art because that's a fairly popular one.
Maybe you need to set something about how big the pixels need to be, maybe.
When I've done it before, I just clicked on it and it came out pretty good. Could switch it and give it a dripping effect so that it looks like things are running down. And then give it sort of a bright metally texture so it looks like things are melting. Maybe after I do a few things, the pixel art will show up more. Smooth just the outside and we end up with some shape like that. Let's see if pixel art does anything now. Pixelize. That, well, it did something. It didn't, it looked better before doing that, but it pixelated the stuff, but we have all those filters and things. So that's definitely something to play around with, make your art, make your stuff look a lot better very quickly. So for 2D things, and then you can just export the pixel art. And it goes the other way too. I'm just gonna put a picture in Paint. I'll just do a smiley face in Paint real quick. So maybe we have something bigger than that. Looks like a good size. I'll just do calligraphy then. Yeah, that'll work. Grab a yellow one and do a bunch of swirls, something like that. Oh, I didn't like that. Bunch of swirls, fill it in, and a black one. Just have some, just a quick little smiley face thing going on there. It's like, okay, that image is gonna work, but kind of want that as SVG so we can go back in and edit stuff. So I'm gonna save that somewhere, probably the delete folder. Oh, I guess I gotta use those, some of those images we already had. And then over in Inkscape, which is the open source version of Illustrator, so if you want to pay for stuff, you can pay for Adobe Illustrator and claim that as business expense. Now, when we, instead of just going over and importing that image, we can come over to the path and trace a bitmap out of it. The different ones, if we're tracing, whoops. And you want to choose from the different image type you have, maybe it's something that was scanned in, so like an actual photo. You want to pull something out of it, or a multicolor image, or you actually have something pixel art that you want to change to SVG for version 2 of the game or something. Or cartoons that revolve around your video game promo materials. You want to make it look the pixel art works great in the video game, but it's not going so well when you send it to the screen press to make goodies out of it and get that extra merch money from your character. So I'm going to switch it to something with SVG. I'll try this one. So okay, we do have to import the image and then we do that. There's other similar software I use where there's a secondary import button there. I was thinking about that. So I'm going to bring in this image from the file. I'll just go with the defaults for now. We get that image, and then when it's selected, we can choose some settings on here. The more scans you have, the better of an image you're going to get. So I'll go maybe something 50. But also, the more scans you have, the longer it's going to take, especially for a detailed image. Probably remove the background. Choose different, adjust the things, smooth things out. Optimization, like how clear does it really need to be, and update it. And then it didn't fit on my screen. If you have to scroll down, if you're happy with it, you can hit apply, and then you have an SVG version of that. character that could be used elsewhere. That one was really simple, so that was easy to follow. But as you get more complicated characters, it's not going to do as good a job, obviously. Hopefully that's not a surprise to anyone. But it can be useful to get it to SVG, and then once it's in SVG format, it can be edited. And notice it's not different shapes here. Wait, maybe it is. Oh, it looks like it was able to pull 2 different shapes based off the colors. It can't always do that. This time, sometimes it can. You get different results because it's an automated process on something that would be impossible by hand. So it's kind of like the Photoshop thing. Sometimes we have to make several tries and do different adjustments till we figure out the exact same one. If anybody's ever had to like touch up their profile picture or something, it's pretty common. But then once we have it, we can do that editing, and we can still go in and edit all those every vertex and fix anything about an image if we want to. So being able to give it to and from bitmaps, even if we know we want pixel art the whole time, really useful tool to have in there. But mostly those were the 2 that I wanted to show. The in and I guess we can call them in and out buttons. For path, we bring other things, bringing paths in, mostly the ones at the top. The ones down here are much more complicated. So for the graphic designers, they get to the rest of these buttons when they do a like 4-year graphic design program. Spend like when they're seniors and have already spent 3.5 years studying Adobe software, they get to what those other buttons do. Or under filters, there's just so many things that we can do. And we can select these, where we bring in that pixel art, select both of those, and switch it to frosted, add some frosting to it or something. That's randomly selected one. You'll get the idea there. I'll go ahead and save these. Like so many things we've seen this semester, I'm just pointing towards some buttons and like, these are, some of these are advanced buttons and some of these are starting out buttons. So those are some great starting out buttons that will make huge differences in your characters. Right, that started as 3 just little blobs. It looks kind of neat now. You put that as a background, and that would be nice in a background on a video game. Maybe not that exact shape, but something like graffiti tags in the background that give meaning to a player. Or your player's trying to carry out a mission, and they're wandering around this city, and maybe the graffiti in the background is a little hint to it, and that looks like quickly spray painted graffiti, doesn't it? So I did not pay attention to what steps I did there, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to come back to this video and figure out how I come up with that nice looking spray painted graffiti thing or something in the future. So, but those are some good starting out buttons to play around with and help take your art to the next level. And remember the Bob Ross thing, happy little accents. Try to learn, right? Don't spend all your time trying to get a perfect image to begin with. Try to learn. If it's not going well, close it down, learn from the process, right? It might not have been going towards what you wanted, but it would have had to been going somewhere that might work useful in future art. So go through them, not randomly like I did just there, but meaningfully, and pay attention to what you're doing, because if you're on game development interesting, you're probably going to make art more than one time. And those are some great buttons to start out with, because SVG has that just editing capabilities. Next thing, we saw moving vertexes one by one. There was one thing that got skipped that I probably should have not skipped when we did that. I'm gonna delete everything and then add in another cube. Cube seems like a good place to start with. I'm going edit mode. And up here's our selection tool. So like select vertexes, select edges, select faces. Or actually, I select all of them. then right click and subdivide, we end up with a lot more faces. Like my faces, I'm gonna make vertices. Don't need to get too far. So like we saw before, we have that subdivided. We could delete that vertex, but then we kind of have a hole here, right? We're seeing the inside of it, and we might want to add some shapes to it. So I'm gonna select like 3 vertexes, zoom in. So like maybe here, up there, I'm holding shift for multiple selection. So hold shift, select those 3 vertices, and when you push F, that fills in that face with a new polygon. That was left out in the first lecture. That's an important. When we delete things, select the vertices that would make the new polygon and then push F to fill in that face. Do the same thing over here. That one, hold shift, and that one, and that one. Push F to fill that in. That one. Push F. Down here, select that, and that, and that. And push F, and now we're back to a filled-in shape. With that odd-looking corner.
That actually looks like somebody who knew what they were doing did something.
I'm gonna do something else. I'm gonna come over to this side. I'm gonna grab all of these vertices to introduce the next little tool, the set of tools. So you see from based off that corner that we changed which vertices it was. So like if we're looking straight at it, basically the left face. I'm gonna select those and hit delete those vertices, and then the faces can connect to them with them as well. So now we only have that original right half of the cube. Because things are symmetric. Right? And humans like symmetry. Humans tend to swap patterns, so symmetry gets very, very complicated, right? Humans see symmetry in like sea anemones. Things that look like little bushes, they're very symmetrical, but not just one way, but the human mind likes symmetry. So when your stuff is symmetric, it'll be really nice. And getting perfectly symmetric from this be a little bit difficult at times, right? If you had to do that in something highly detailed and had to do everything twice, it'd be a bit much. So I'm just gonna keep the right half of the cube there and go back in object mode. And some good starting tools to work with are the ones, the icon over here looks like a wrench. That's the modifiers. So that we can just do a bunch of things. And we come down there and we can add a new modifier. So, oops. Click add modifier. Oh, they've updated this. And they used to all pop out at once. So what do we want to do? Do we want modifiers to edit things like transferring the data? UV wrapping, we saw UV with our normal textures the other day, that's the coordinates. So this is like the 2D images, right? We make a model of a face, and then we go over to something that's really good for editing 2D things like Inkscape or GIMP, and we draw that face, and then we come back and put it on there. That's actually this right here. So we have different textures. I can come over here, select all of those, and notice how it gives the face shape here. We can export this to two-dimensional graphics editing software, and we have the lines of where every face is on a 2D flat surface. Then when we bring that in and wrap it back around our shape, and we have highly, highly detailed things.
This is how they do stuff like Minecraft skins.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
I've seen those unfold before, and they look like that.
Yeah. So you go to the UV editing, unwrap, and then you hit right click. In edit mode, you select everything, and you push U for unwrap, and then you can unwrap from some smart projection on it. We'll choose a good projection for it, or from the view you're looking at, you can adjust till you find the right view. That makes it a lot easier, because when we're looking at all those faces laid flat, it's hard to tell which one's which, especially if there's lots of vertices. If you, project from screen, smart UV, cube projection, cube projections, I've heard some people really like these, and I always get confused in these. Doesn't that look like there's a whole bunch of things laying on top of each other? Yeah. It isn't, but it looks like layers to me, and I start to get confused on those. But you can try those different tools. The smart one looks like it unwrapped nicely. Get all those faces, and you take that over to other software, fill it in, fill each individual face in. So maybe you have scales of a dragon. Each scale is going to be a different face. You fill it in with the appropriate colors and nice 2D graphic editing software, and then bring that back in and just wrap it around your image. That's not a bad spot to start. I thought I'd go ahead and show it. I wanted to look at modifiers, so that's what and then when you bring it back in, under your edit modifier, there's your stuff for, that was projecting, so then we can also wrap the same way. Wrapping's the other way. We would take the 2D image and just wrap it around ours. Under generate, we're making new stuff. This is what we use modifiers for most often. Maybe you need to repeat it. So like maybe your game calls for a Greek style temple with those columns going all the way around, those Greek Parthenon style columns going all the way around. You don't want to draw every single column, right? You want to draw one column and then just create an array of them. Actually, that would probably a 2D array of them. And create the one and then make a 2D array of those. It's like 12 long, a 12 by 2 array. And then you have all the columns and just space them out. You go ahead and click that array. Let's make like 4 of them. Spread them out 0.3 units on the z-axis and 1.7 on the x-axis, and we get sort of a staircase. So see how we just made a whole bunch of copies of that one thing. If you want to keep it, you can just keep it there and eventually hit apply. In some game engines, you'll need to apply it to make it a single mesh. If the engine is integrated with Blender, so Godot and Unreal, and I think JMonkey will, and whatever the alphanumeric name for the one that started with the Quake game is these days. Those are integrated with Blender, so we could just keep the modifier here, and then we could go back and edit it like we were doing with our landscapes.
How would you do, because like this is like one column of, and how would you do, like you had talked about with like the Roman columns or whatever, Greek columns, you'd have multiple
You can
rows, columns, like how would you do that sort of thing?
fit the link, fit the curve. You can make a copy of it into offsets. There's lots and lots of different settings. Do the different settings. Personally, I would just do it on one side and copy it to the other side.
Just have 2 different arrays of columns.
Yeah, but there are settings that you can bring them together.
I used to just make another
Yeah, so now that we have that, it is a 2-dimensional array. If we add another array and offset this one 0 on the X and like 2 on the Y, something like that. So it's not the do you see how that's 2-dimensional array? Because it's not a replica of it's an array of the first array.
Oh, so you rate this, okay, yeah, I was clicking the button, so you then, after that, you then clicked on the array, to make an array of the array.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, so we're not making a second exact array. We make one array and then we make an array of the array. And if you decide you don't want something, then the little X click canceled it. Let's get back to the original one, because I started talking about symmetry. Under generate mural is really, really nice. Right, which axis do we want to flip across? Yeah. There's different ones, but yeah, going across the y-axis based off that thing that was deleted. Finished out that one, that shape, so now we have that, but if we go in edit mode. Notice we still only actually have half the shape. But Blender is so popular that more game engines will accept that with the mod. We don't have to apply the modifier. If you like everything, you can come down here and hit apply. Oh, I have to go back to object mode. Come over here and hit apply. Notice the modifier disappeared from here, and if I go back to edit mode, now we have the whole shape. With Unity, you have to do that. Quite a few there's still quite a few you have to do. There's a lot of game engines out there. But a mirror modifier is a really good one to use. Let me undo. And so, yeah. So we have that applied. It's a bunch of settings. You can kind of start working with the settings and things like that. Extend things out of path like screw shapes, solid shapes. You can click on some of these, try different things, see what works, what doesn't work. I'm gonna come back into a subdivision in a moment. Deform, we can work things, stretch them out, or edit. There's something behind my Zoom buttons. I'm not seeing. It's also a good way to cut holes. I don't see the one that I usually use to cut holes. Oh, Boolean. So let me add a cylinder here, which I'll rotate around the y-axis by 90 degrees. So I hit RY90. Now we SX to scale it longer along the x-axis. Really longer. Really long along the x-axis. So now I can just hit S and scale it down in every direction at once. And kind of move it into a good placement so that it can cut a hole into cut a nice little hole into our shape over here. So see how it's overlapping? I'm going to come back to the cube and add a modifier for a Boolean. And with the Boolean, we can keep just the intersection of them, the union of them, or the difference between them. So on our object, we want to create a Boolean with the cylinder, the only other object on here right now. You probably want to give that some sort of useful name, and if we turn the visibility off on it, we have a nice little cylindrical groove cut through our thing. So the modifiers are very, very powerful tools for editing these things, but you'll want to kind of click around on them first. That would be my recommendation. This is where the buttons are. Click around on them for a few minutes, and then go start looking up tutorials and stuff. Does that make sense? Tutorial second, like click first, and that makes it a lot easier to follow the tutorial because they're going to be clicking on buttons. And if you clicked around a little bit first, you might remember where some of the buttons are, probably not all of them, but it gets you a good start. And that'll work. At this point, we could probably go ahead and apply both of those. apply that. Apply that. And then we can just get rid of our cylinder. Probably rename it to something useful like hole punch or something like that. It's just the tool we use to cut that out of there. We probably want to go back and recreate bases on that, but that'll be okay. One of the, you can see there's a lot of useful ones there. Let's go through the list. I'm gonna hit undo to get back to this spot, and I'm just gonna hide the cell. Oh, that is gone. I'm gonna hit undo and not do that whole bunch one. Because it was leaving a hole, we would need to come back and create bases there, close some stuff in, but holes can be very, very useful. I will apply the mirror modifier here. Click apply, so that way we're back to just one single shape. But that's awful flat. So I think I'll scale it up a little so we can have more room to work with. I'll scale it up to whatever size it is now. It's big. It's bigger than it was. Might want to deform it a little. And this is the one I was talking about the other day. Those noise textures, like we talked about, we can use those to add vertices, edges, and faces. So I want to deform modifier, but before I do that, let's go to generate. And this one right down here, the subdivision surface. Because right now we only have a couple of vertices to work with. Right? We can only deform so much with 6 vertices on there. So I'm going to go to subdivision surface. And this one's going to take a moment. We sit and wait for it to get done. And notice we have way more faces and vertices and edges to work with now. Over here, go to simple. So that way we still have the same shape. And we can add more, maybe, you don't need to go very big. For
What kind of modifier is this?
this is a, under generate.
Yeah.
A subdivision surface. We split it up into, and unlike edit mode, so we go back to edit mode. Because we still only have those original vertices. So it's a more of it's internal internal replication of the vertices instead of actually making new vertices. So obviously a lot of saves a lot of processing power when we get to the game because we still only have that minimum number of vertices.
So if you put it in the game and
this is for modeling. It gives us better models because by the time we're finished, we'll create the vertices we need. But having them all here would really slow everything down because then we have to process every single vertex while we're doing the graphics.
while you're designing everything.
Yes. While you're
So if you hit apply, does that make all those vertices that you see, or all the fake vertices real then? Like,
hit apply and go to edit mode. Yeah.
oof.
So it will determine how many we need. While you stepped out of Grace, we added a subdivision modifier, but since I know you had Maya, you use Maya at Purdue, right? Yeah, yeah. So if you use Maya, you definitely you probably saw a subdivision modifier.
Yeah.
So yeah, the button for it is under generate subdivision surface. So I'm gonna leave this here. I don't want to apply it yet. We know how many we need. We have another modifier under form, I think. Displace. So under deform is a displacement modifier. And these can make things, well, this can make things look really nice, really, really quickly. We'll come back and edit that. It's like, okay, we have to displace something, let's try just smoothing it. Smoothing, so we can call displacement. We can do better than that. See how it says a new button right here? If we click new, it's wants a new texture.
Look like it deflated.
Yeah,
At least on mine looks kind of different from yours. Mine looks like it went from overinflated to deflated.
yeah, sometimes doing this, I found extra shapes along the way. I'm like, oh, that's really neat, I'm gonna save that as a spaceship for the next time I do a sci-fi game.
It kind of looks like packaging, you know, those things that hold the products inside of it.
Oh,
Like the cardboards,
Yeah,
The cardboard, yeah,
the cardboard frames.
yeah.
yeah, so notice, that, we gave it a texture, but we haven't defined what that texture is, there's no texture to it.
Little guy, I don't know what the
I'm
heck.
gonna give it a name so we know it's, I'm gonna call it my new texture so we can tell we're looking at it the whole time. So when we do that, see the icon there, looks like a checkerboard. If we scroll down, we have a tool down at, a menu of tools down at the bottom that has that same icon. So if we get on here, here's where we edit our textures. And notice that name I just created, the my new texture, is already loaded up. But there's nothing in that texture. What type is it? An image or movie? There's no image or movie loaded in. So if we had an image, that's where we get the realism. So we bring in images or something, the texture we want, and then use that to displace things. But let's get a little more advanced. We can do some blend, clouds, or Musgrave. That word showed up the other day, kind of. I had it as a note on the board. We talked about Voronoi. Voronoi and Berlin are probably our two basic ones. Voronoi is Musgrave with n equals 1. We go to the closest closest point we selected, but we could choose, instead of the closest, we could go with the 7th closest point. The lower the number of point, the nth point we're going to, the closer to a square it will be. And you saw the other day how some of the Voronoi with n equals 1 get a long way from squares. But we can go to the Musgrave because we did Voronoi because it was all doing stuff on the board. Definitely not going to do the 13th closest point on the board. Musgrave works pretty well for this. So does Speccy. I'll go with Musgrave. So there's the texture. Looks like a mess right now, but we can. We're gonna come back and clean this up and stuff. So we make lots of different changes. So right now, I'm looking at this part. So I'm looking at the texture, not what the model's doing, because we haven't done any. We haven't changed any settings on that modifier, so it's just trying to randomly do things with the texture we had. For the other thing. Good.
It seems like stuff you would need to do both and stuff. Actually.
Yeah, it takes some getting used to figure out which ones to work very well for this. Other than that, I'll just make a few changes. I was just pointing at the buttons. You're gonna want to play around with this, and definitely one of those to undo and try again a few times. So you create a displacement texture, create a new texture for it. Voronoi, Musgrave works good. So does Marble, Stucky. Actually, there's quite a few. Voronoi down there. We could just jump right to it. You can go with Musgrave, and now I'm gonna go back to that modifier. And here make some changes. Like how strong is it? This is the big thing. Let's turn that way down from, instead of 100%, let's go down to like 0.2%. Or even smaller, maybe 0.02. I'll type that in. I'm gonna figure that 0.07. That'll work. So very low strength, and look how much it textured that up. I was kind of randomly doing stuff, but somewhere in here I see something that looks like an old sofa. Right? I don't think so. That's been like torn to shreds, and that you'd find in a cabin that's been abandoned for 20 years in the woods. It's like, oh, that would have been a nice opening a couple decades ago. It's a little things like that. I'm trying to mid-level down. So no problem things to extend as I turn the middle level down. Set up vertex groups, and if we change the normal. Um, I kind of see it on this side. I'm trying to go for something that look more like a stack of rocks. They're kind of all pointed the same direction. So. Normal. Global coordinates. Seem to be pointing in different directions, but that's starting to look like that's looking more like a pile of rocks now, right? I see how we just use that texture to do all of that. Coordinates. Oh, that's more than what I was looking for. There's a lot in there, probably more than we need.
Some things that change for you don't really do much for me. Interesting.
Yes, you will definitely want to,
Because like changing the coordinates aren't doing really nothing.
yeah, not all of them will, which coordinates are you using? Make sure,
All of them.
so if you change local, then, you have something different, so like local X. Puts that only on the X direction, then we have some smooth some ways and rough the other. But global X. Same directions, but a lot smaller. So those two go together. And notice we're doing global coordinates and local space right now. So we could do local coordinates and global space and get a completely different result too.
Yeah, changing it from local to global to any of that's not changing anything.
What is the one in between them, say, the direction?
Probably X.
Something to play around with, where's your strength at? Strength in mid-level.
But I'm not drastically changing the values. Nothing makes it talking to global and all that stuff. I can change the strength to mid level and that moves things, but like the changing between local and X, like the local and global thing is not changing.
I'm gonna have to look into that. That should be changing. Is there a preview mode that's turned off? Do you have the same things clicked up here at the top?
Yes. Like I can change it and move it. It's just we'll change how it's change.
Using that with RGB. I'm in neat little shape for it. Remember we did that fireball earlier in the semester? That one makes it pretty, that one would look pretty nice as a fireball. And then to edit, to change it, you can script the strength change. To get a fireball as it progresses, gets longer and longer and longer tail. And then adjust the end. I can't remember where I was.
You can do scripting stuff in one.
Yes, Blender script with Python. I'm going back to object coordinates in local space with a normal direction. Usually can get a nice looking pile of stones. The size looks really small there, so I'm gonna go back to the texture one. And now when we start changing things, we get a bit more, it seems a bit more controlled in our movement here, right? And just that little bitty application of those modifiers, we can add a lot of flair to our thing. So just like the other ones, start with the basic picture and we don't have to draw every single detail. We can have the computer fill in the details, which sometimes takes some back and forth, some undoing. We also have changed this, so, I'm not gonna get into, I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on the description, but instead of the Blender Musgrave, let's go to Voronoi F2, F1 Musgrave. And look how much our texture changed, and that looks a bit more like a pile of rock, pile of rubble. If we didn't still have those square corners. But yeah, the idea there, how we can mess around with them, and you just keep getting more and more changes, get different settings down here. And you make sure you're using the preview window here for that thing. Load in your own textures, lots and lots of different things, and then when we apply this, well, we could run it, we could take it over to Godot as is, and it would still run. Apply that. Apply that. And notice how everything went away when I applied it. Any thoughts on why that happened? I applied this and it went away. Applied this and it's still gone. Any thoughts?
I was paying attention.
So I applied the displacement and then applied the subdivision. Anything sound off in that sentence?
You need to apply the subdivision first.
Order matters. Apply subdivision, because if we try to apply the displacement before it's actually been subdivided, we only had those original, what, 10 or 12 vertices? So we can't do anything, and now we go in here and there's a lot more to work with and a good starting shape. More interesting than just a box shape. Those are good ones to play around with. The mirror, the array, and the displacement, and use the textures that are there. You saw how long that list of textures was, right? Come down here, create a new texture. Yeah. Use clouds. Just some sort of distortion. Marble gets some nice striping. That cabin we looked at the other day, I was trying to modify the marble one to get the log things. Is the level we looked at. You could just have white noise. Blender does a lot of white noise. Usually we have the smoothed out randomness, but Blender goes ahead and makes randomness a noise as well.
I mean, fair. Yeah, sometimes you want that.
Yes.
This is how you did that chimney thing that you've been talking about.
Yeah, that one was with Musgrave. With some of those other settings.
Just playing around till you got what you
Yeah, play around with settings to get what you want. It makes nice straight lines, but they're very symmetrical, which I really just like the name wood on that because wood is not symmetrical. It does have we would have wood with vertical lines, but they would not be perfectly spaced and symmetrical, and they wouldn't be perfectly straight. Wood would be more like what they call marble here, where they're spaced differently. And
I mean, to be fair, if you cut a plank, if they're, you look at the piece out and see it's more like that.
Yeah, I guess it depends on the wood too.
Yeah.
Bird's eye maple versus locust. Locust would be very, very, very straight, right?
Your stereotypical, what I think your average person thinks of when they think wood's probably akin to what they have for wood.
But the point of that
That's
is,
typically how it's like.
here's where those buttons are. Here's those buttons to play around with. And while doing that, there's other ones we can look at. We did all our examples in Godot because, well, one of the biggest factors is y'all notice how quickly Godot starts on everybody's machine. That's not the case with others. Unreal did run on my computer, which is the cheapest laptop at Walmart. It did not run well. I would not try to do more than boxes moving. I didn't even try to get to capsules moving. Boxes moving around a plane did run on single colored boxes moving around a single colored plane.
It quote unquote worked.
It did not crash. I say it right. It did not crash. So that's where the progression is going, right? We can look at a screenshot of that. Unreal Engine 5. I know there's some screenshots of the editor.
I was about to say,
Yeah, there's probably 5,000 pages of cool things made with it.
yeah,
So let's open this up. Make this big.
looks somewhat similar.
So do you see some similarities?
Yeah.
Have a object hierarchy over here. The folders clearly tell us that it goes down here. This is all customizable. You can change it wherever you want. Our run button has a drop down, so there's different ways we can run. So we can do remote runs, or we can do the individual scene or the whole game. Hopefully that's implied, and it's in the top left where we probably used to look for it.
No, accidentally hitting the big play button, realizing shit, that needed to set the scene.
They have the hierarchy over here. They have stuff over here. Another picture of that. A different setup. This is kind of the industry standard to write our code that way, our scripts that way. Because we use almost all pre-built functions, right? And we're just adding a couple little details. And artists are trained with this type of coding thing. We do not have it in Godot right now. It was in Godot 1, 2, and 3. And they made a new one that's really, really nice. But the new one's not going to be backward compatibility. Not going to be backward compatible. So what they decided to deal with that is just to leave it out of 4. So then there's a gap, and when they add it in Godot 5, it won't. Hopefully backward compatibility all the way to 3 is not going to be a big issue. Like, yeah, we'll go backward to 4, but you want to go backward compatibility like 8 or 9 years, that's not something developers should be expected to keep up on. Go backward a couple years. But most of our game engines do have this. It just so happens that Godot has a better one coming. So we're in a gap on that right now.
How long will it take to get to Godot 5? How long do they stay on each thing for?
It'll be a few years.
Years.
Yeah. It might come out somewhere later in 4, but it's there's going to be a large gap. That way they don't break backward compatibility. But yeah, you see similar things in these pictures. We have hierarchies and inspector panels, list of all the objects we have, file explorers, and they seem different, but as far as the editor goes, it's very similar to what we're used to looking. You could find your way around it, right? You wouldn't be completely lost. Similar thing on Unity. This one looks like it's probably in the default setting. Open your tab. Got our hierarchy.
You might want to
All the
pop preview and then open that one. You have that's probably a bit more zoomed in.
oh,
Easier to see.
we gotta say we don't need to read the words here, but still have our hierarchy here. We can see the folders, so there's our file explorer across the bottom, our preview, the run buttons at the top middle, have the inspector panel over here. So very, very similar to what we've seen. And these three, Godot, Unreal, and Unity, are not competitors to each other. They all do different things. They all have different strengths and weaknesses. The reason you always hear those three grouped together is remember how we kept putting export in our scripts and stuff would show up in the inspector panel. These are the three that we can add stuff to the inspector panel from our script. That's why they get categorized together. They are in no way competitors to each other.
Unreal's
The other two can't even come close to Unreal. They can't even pretend like they can, but they always get grouped with it. And the reason why is because we can, from our scripts, we can add stuff to the editor panel, usually in the inspector panel.
You think Godot's gonna catch up?
Unreal donated the stuff that they did not choose. So they didn't realize, they didn't make the new shaders and be like, okay, we're gonna go with this one, get the lead on all of those files. They said, okay, we're gonna go with this one, share that with open source or something. So there's gonna be major progressions, but Unreal is big enough that
They'll keep ahead.
it's not gonna let them completely close the gap.
Unless Unreal screws up like Unity did and everybody flocks back to Godot, everybody from Unreal flocks to Godot too.
Yes, you know, Unreal is a for-profit company, so that one's in there as well. It's hard to say what the future's gonna bring. There might be a new one.
So what is each one, quote unquote, specialized or best at?
Unity is best to integrate from pre-made assets, pre-made artwork. Unity's primary goal is to sell artwork and collect data. Not to make games. Games are just a way to sell artwork and make data. So it allows for very, very quick getting art in there as long as you're buying art and not making it.
Somebody somewhere.
Yes.
And then Unreal is the shader.
The shaders and yeah. For those three, Unreal and Godot, the goal is to make a good game editor. The goal is to make really good video games. And then that comes afterwards. But yeah. Here we go.
What does Godot excel at?
Running anywhere. You're running on a Chromebook like I'm in school. I've done a lot of people how to do that. It's fairly easy to run it on a Chromebook. It runs great on a Chromebook. But I showed a number that there's nothing complicated about that one if you have full access to it. But I showed a number of people how to run Godot on Chromebook that's been locked out by the store. It runs on a Chromebook. It's free. It's easy. It's open source advantage. And if it doesn't work for your needs, you can go to the source code and change the source code so that it will fit your needs. Ultimately, I'd say that it excels at starting up quickly and having an easy learning curve that can be translated to the bigger ones. So here's JMonkey Engine. I really like Java, but I'm pretty sure that's just because I've typed so much more stuff in Java, coded so much more stuff in Java than other languages over Java's 20-year run as the most popular programming language. It had a long run as most popular. And a long run is the only cross-platform. Open image into that but there's a bunch of file stuff down here that looks like a hierarchy, like we saw. Internally, it's set up different. It's a different type of tree internally, but as far as the editor, it's a lot like the hierarchy we used already. Got our preview, bunch of tools down here, and not showing in this picture, but the previews here. And then when we select stuff from the hierarchy and JMonkey, the inspector panel is along the bottom.
This is a Java based.
This one with Java. The thing about Java isn't the language itself, it's some conventions that go with Java. The unwritten conventions that everybody just agrees to write our code the same way. It allows us to do other things. The biggest thing is observables and factories and really observables. We can parse somebody else's code even if we've never seen it. We don't have to go just the output of the code. Which is like, that comes from, we can only do that from like an unwritten convention that we all just agree to write our variable, use the same naming conventions on variables and constants and methods. We write our code the same way, and then we can interact with each other's code, not just the output from it. Adds a lot of power. That convention is what's like. It gives some big advantages. But if you like to, or if you just like typing in Java for some reason, do the same things, right? Our file explorer, our inspector panel, GDevelop. You see some conventions, some consistencies here.
Mhm.
Looks like a good picture for it. Um, that looks like things that would be there. We see there for G develop. Here's G develop. We got our not a hierarchy, it's just more of a list of all the stuff in our game. That ties into some internal background stuff. It's on the right here. This looks an awful lot like an inspector panel over on the left with other tabs we can work with.
This looks,
Run buttons. Do you see some consistency? So even though we were looking at things in Godot, hopefully when you open other game engines, you'll be able to find your way
that looks like a more simple,
with this.
less control over various things.
Game Maker is incredibly popular and has been for a long time, and is super easy to work with. But once again, it's kind of blurry. I'm almost gonna clear it. Down here's our files, up here's our objects. Over here's our inspector and sort of the same stuff we're used to. Down here's our signals. But hopefully what we've looked at in Godot isn't Godot specific. That's why I tried to generalize as much as possible. That advantage of Godot is it has that really nice learning curve.
So it seems like there's everyone in the world before those involved. So
Yes, we went all the way, Unreal uses the same language for syntax like OpenGL for the shaders. So we typed that same syntax and we went all the way through that shader example on Monday in about the time it would take to start Unreal. I mean, it's much bigger, it does a lot more, so the speed, the easier learning curve, but hopefully y'all are seeing that there's an evident translation to all our other game engines. We're not stuck with just one. You'll want to click on some others and play around with some, see what you like. But really, Unity has been incredibly popular for a while, and with corporate decisions, people were just flat angry at Unity and wanted to attack them. So there's a lot of advancement in Godot right now that is just a deliberate attack to Unity. And
we're gonna make your
humans are very, very motivated by conflict. We try to logically, we understand that there's better ways. But yeah, I think everybody's aware of that. That's the logical part where we stop and think about it, but that just wanting to attack Unity is gonna lead to a lot of advancements in Godot, so you can probably stick with that for a while.
It gets results. I don't know if anybody here heard about the thing with Helldivers that went on over the weekend.
Yeah.
Like, so Helldivers 2, Sony made a decision where they required Helldivers 2 people to link to a Sony account.
Yes.
And to create and link to a Sony account, which a lot of other game studios do. But they do,
You can look it up. That's something different. That's different than game development. So y'all can look that up after class. But hopefully you can take what we did here and progress a little bit further in game development. Anybody have any questions before we wrap up for today and the semester, I guess? But if you think of it, you can ask me questions. Pretty much.
Got some questions with stuff.
Okay. Yeah, pretty much at the end of the semesters, I keep my schedule open so that if any questions come in, I can quickly hop on the Zoom call. So from now till Sunday, I have meetings today and tomorrow. So really Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, my schedule is open. And I'll just be sitting around mostly waiting on questions to come our way. We can on the Zoom call immediately. Please make sure you get everything submitted before 11:59 p.m. on Sunday. And that will be nothing's accepted after that deadline. If you have any questions, let me know. hopefully he can take that little introduction we were able to get into this course and expand on it with, as we move forward.
You had,
We'll have a great summer.
you had talked about,